The streets are buzzing. New York Knicks take game one of the Eastern Conference first round series, defeating the Hawks 113-102 at Madison Square Garden. CT on the post-game live. My brother co-host EJ is about to come through as well as we chop this thing up and break it down. The Knicks get off on the right foot in this series, right? I predicted a 5-game series and lots to break down in this one as Karl-Anthony Towns was dominant. Mikal Bridges, great performance, right? Jalen Brunson started the game flaming hot, right? But a couple of other guys were unsung heroes as well. And I thought some sloppy performances in the first half. But Atlanta never said quit. They kept coming. But ultimately, man, they did not have enough to really scare the Knicks too much. Obviously, though, the Knicks got to clean a lot of things up, fam, and be on their A game. As Atlanta, you expect to make a couple of adjustments. First and foremost, I don't think the Knicks really dominated the paint as well as I thought they were going to, but it was the perimeter game tonight. Karl-Anthony Towns hit big-time shots down the stretch. I thought OG was really good. Jalen Brunson, man, what can we say? First quarter, it was something like 15 points, and he could not miss early. But CJ McCollum put in a really good performance, I thought. And Okongwu continues to hurt the Knicks from three, man. Give us your thoughts. Live chat. We see you guys buzzing, right? Thank you for joining us. Hit that like button, right? All the way on this run. We stick together. Give us your thoughts, man. Great to see Deuce McBride hit some timely shots as well. And look, I thought the Knicks should have put this game away a lot earlier. But I'll start by saying, the first game is always the easiest to steal, I feel like, for the road team. And regardless, right, the New York Knicks 3-6 matchup, I think the Knicks have a lot, too many more weapons than the Hawks. But I thought the Hawks really played as well as they could, given, on the road, hostile environment, man. The crowd was amazing. The energy was cool. We were missing Clyde and Breen, man, on MSG networks. But obviously, all the playoffs now are on national TV. But look, OG Anunoby responded from rolling the ankle. He came good as well. Shook it off as well. This was a physical game, man. I thought Clarkson gave the Knicks a good spark. Mike Brown made a good adjustment as well late in the ball game with Landry Shamet not hitting his stroke. That is a bit of a concern moving forward. We'll talk about that, guys. Landry hasn't really been hitting the shots late, and he was swapped out for Hart earlier towards the down the stretch, and Hart came back in sooner, and the Knicks had enough to close this one out. Enough separation because the big bodega, I think, was the hero to close it out. Brunson was the captain to start it off, and Cat Panther, the big bodega, took us to victory, fam. What's up? Paula, salute, chat. Jay Mars in the building. Chris Gotti, Nick Nadership. Let's get it, guys. How you feeling? Feeling good. I feel like this should go 5. This could be a sweep, but I think the Hawks have enough talent to steal one. But yeah, it's all about game 2 now, guys. You've got to have a short memory in the playoffs, right? You've got to put this one to bed, right? And come out a lot more strong, I think, in game 2 and snatch their heart out, right? I thought CJ McCollum, man, the vet, he put him on his back. Jalen Johnson had a tidy performance for a guy that really hasn't had a lot of experience. But as you see, man, Cat so fired up in this one, man. It was Cat's defense, which was real solid. Chris, man, great comments here. Salute to everyone. We'll shout you out all night, fam. Game 1, always good to get off on the right foot. Chris says Cat and the Knicks need to clean up them turnovers. 100% facts. Nick Tatership says Brunson was cooking first quarter. Yeah, both were huge keys in this ball game, right? To Chris's point, man, we would have put this game to bed a lot earlier, but also we got off on the right foot. You don't want to give the road team, confidence early. You don't want to give them no life. And Brunson's start was key. I thought Hart's start was a little sloppy, man, especially when he wasn't given the rock up and got that turnover early. Dyson Daniels got the strip. But yeah, Dyson really hurt. I think the Hawks tonight offensively, and that's something I think the Knicks can exploit a lot more with the ghost coverage, leaving Dyson Daniels wide open. I'll tell you one thing, man, you can't leave a Kongu open, can't leave CJ open, you can't leave Jalen Johnson open. Although I don't think Jalen Johnson's a big time 3-point shooter, but he can drive and get into the paint. I thought Hud's defense, though, on Jalen Johnson, man, we're going to give him a big shout out as well. But yeah, the energy is high, man. We're all the way up. And it's always positive, man, when you don't play great and you get the win. There's plenty of improvement, and obviously this is the start, man, of what we hope, what we anticipate is going to be a long playoff run where we get to the big dance. Hopefully, every single Nick, ladies and gentlemen, was in the plus as well. As my co-host EJ's just come through backstage, going to bring my brother EJ through in a second. We continue to shout you guys out, fam. CT and EJ on the ones and twos tonight as the New York Knicks get right off a good start, fam. Whenever you have a week off, it is always tricky. I didn't see no rust early. I just saw, some typical sloppiness that we have seen, throughout this roller coaster season. It has been up, it has been down, but ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks 1-0 take care of business, right? As I welcome in my brother EJ Blanchard in the building, the Nick Professor, right? Great to have you with us, fam, in the
Yo,
chat.
how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Knicks up 1-0. My boy CT. Um, it's been a minute. 1-0. There's no way. There's no way we're gonna start the playoffs and your boy EJ is not gonna be here for this particular show. So, congratulations to the Knicks squad. Congratulations for a 1-0 series lead thus far. I know Knicks Buzz, we're all excited about what's happening potentially for this series. There was a lot of conversation as to what the series is going to be for the Knicks. And once we got to the fourth quarter, the Knicks really took control and pretty much won handedly. I mean, obviously, there's some things that we have to clean, but this is an exciting start for 2025 2026 playoff season. CT, how are you doing, my boy?
Hey, great to be back, man. Great to be back. Good to get the win. I was just saying, you don't play your best and you get the win. Obviously, there looks like
Yeah.
a lot of things we can clean up. One thing that really impressed me, though, EJ, was we won sort of fast break, the transition game. We didn't beat them up in the paint as much as I'd like. And I want to get your thoughts on the Hack-a-Mitch situation, because we're having this conversation every year with Mitchie.
Yeah.
But how did you see the keys to the Knicks getting the victory? What did you like? What did you think we could do better at?
It's funny because it's as if you read my notes, but I know you couldn't have read my notes because we're so far away from one another. However, that was exactly what I wrote down in my notes. Is at the start of the game, it looked like the tempo favored the Hawks. It was this horse race that I was like, ooh, this is not the kind of game that I've ever really seen the Knicks win consistently. The Hawks have this ability to run effortlessly. They had effortless energy. That's not our game. And so I think that first quarter was really the best opportunity for the Knicks, for the Hawks to win, because that was the kind of game that they wanted to really play throughout all four quarters. Somehow, some way, the tempo, the energy shifted. It became more of a slower paced game. If you think about what the final score was, this is not a typical 2026 NBA game. And so that favors the Knicks, slowing it down, more possession control. And here's where I'll give kudos. And I often am one of these people who knock him, but this was really Carl Anthony Towns' game. So much of the game was decided by critical plays by him, running the offense from the top of the key, passing the ball through the key. We saw a little bit of the last couple of 10 games where we saw this really good pick and roll, this pick and pop combination between Cat and Jalen Brunson. It seemed to reemerge a little bit, but I think some of the keys of the game that made really, really, really are enticing is that we saw Carl Anthony Towns be impressive on both ends at times. Often if we're just talking about his offense, but it's the fact that he had a couple of defensive plays as well throughout the third quarter that really shifted the turn of the game. And to have a game where the Knicks, for the most part, were able to pull apart in the fourth quarter, this is really some of the major keys of the game. What do you think, CT?
Yeah, you summed it up well, man. As we see some former Knicks in the building, Iman Shumpert dressed like he's attending a funeral, as the Knicks expected to handle business in this one. Yeah, we'll continue to shout you guys out, and we'll give you our bigger picture series thoughts now that we've had one game. And I always start by saying this, EJ, the first game is the easiest to steal, I think,
Hmm.
from the road team perspective. And I thought, look, it got a little tight there, and I thought, are they going to make a run? But I think the Knicks just have too many weapons. It might be a different series if they had a healthy Jock Landale, and Hawks will, I think, use that narrative a lot. And I think, look, he would give them a solid punch. But the Hack-a-Mitch thing, yeah, is something that I think, yeah, highlights the Knicks' versatility, right? We ain't solely reliant on Mitch. You see us go
No.
small, and then we still get ahead. We win the transition game. I was kind of thinking, are we going to see a little bit of Sohan at the five or OG at the five? And we got OG at the five as well. But how did you think we guarded? Jalen Johnson, CJ McCollum. I kind of felt like in my preview that the Hawks just wouldn't have enough go-to scoring, and you got a hell of a performance from CJ McCollum, but just still isn't enough. EJ.
I concur. I mean, CJ McCollum is one of these problematic players. He's one of these players that when we look back at his career, you almost diminish or you forget how good of a player he's been. He's problematic. He's one of those kind of players that's also problematic for the Knicks to defend. He just is a great shot. He brought it tonight. I think what happens with the Hack-a-Mitch, and I want to keep track of like everywhere that we want to go with this. Um, when it comes to guarding the Hawks, one of the best things that we have is they're the sixth seed for a reason. Is that they do lack some offensive firepower, which is really important for the 2026 NBA, um, and that's to our benefit. And so if you're going to rely heavily on CJ McCollum and not necessarily get great production, point production from the rest of your starting four, the rest of your starting five, then that works to our benefit. I do also like the fact that we had an opportunity to see some improvement on defensive rotations. There are times where, again, this is really still concerning, where, especially during the first quarter, we saw that the Hawks were able to get those open threes, just basically swinging the ball from one part of the key to the next. But I also think that, again, they don't have the bench presence, nor do they have the offensive firepower coming from the starting lineup. And so this is the thing that I think will really separate us in terms of this particular series. If we can soar consistently, especially with the second unit, if our second unit can vastly outscore what the Hawks are presenting, then this series might be, I'm not saying it will be, but it might be far easier than many of the pundits suggested at the start of the series.
Yeah, I said the keys were to win game one and game two, and then you just put the road team under hell of a lot of pressure. And then all you got to do is just get one on the road. And then you try to close them out back at home in game five. I think that's always the blueprint. Knicks will have heaps of fans in MSG South, in ATL. But before we get there, we've got to talk about game two. Like if you're Atlanta,
Yep.
we both in agreement that they just don't have enough. But if you are Quinn Snyder, like what could you take from Atlanta's perspective? Like what's something you could grab a hold of and say, okay, we got a shot if we do this better, or if we can maybe get the Knicks continuing to turn it over or hack a Mitch again. Like what are you clinging on to?
Well, I would cling on to that first quarter. Their execution in the first quarter was stupendous. And let's not forget that the first quarter was really decided in terms of the Knicks' perspective. It was largely decided by Jalen Brunson's performance. Jalen Brunson scored 19 points in the first quarter. Had he not had the offensive production he had in the first quarter, we're talking an entirely different game. So if you're in the Hawks locker room right now, the conversation you're having is wait, we actually played a pretty solid game for 3 quarters. It's just that Jalen Brunson had a heck of a first quarter, and that's the deciding factor. If he scores 10 fewer points, the Hawks win the game. So I think that's the kind of conversation they're having in the Hawks locker room right now. Is not let's not look at the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter is its own separate animal. If I'm Quinn Snyder, I'm having a conversation about what did we do really well first quarter, because the game was decided by an amazing quarter by Jalen Brunson, which he wasn't able to replicate the rest of the entire game. So let's focus on the first quarter. Let's focus on first quarter execution, moving the ball, playing with speed, playing with aggression. The size of the wings in Atlanta, it's rather daunting. And at first, I was rather concerned because they're so long as opposed to our front court and our wings. Um, Obviously, there's a negative in terms of the five. You know, Okongu matching up against Cat. But if you're Quinn Snyder, you are playing the heck out of that first quarter tape and harping on this series is not even close to being over. It was a Jalen Brunson barrage that really is the difference in terms of the fourth quarter and what ultimately led to our losing this game.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it was a look at these stats now, EJ. I think the Knicks, well, great sign. Shot lights out, 48% from three, shot really well from the free throw line, which I think the Knicks have done a great job shooting those free throws to close the season, regular season. Three free throws have been good. Five blocks, couple from Mitch that we showed, seven steals, McCall getting in the passing lane. I don't think OG even had a trademark defensive game, but yeah, McCall, Hart, I think were outstanding. But yeah, Knicks won the fast break points, 22-13. Second chance points, 13-7. Points in the paint, won by a small margin, but I think should be able to dominate more, a little bit more, if we could maybe keep Mitch out there for the double bigs. A couple sloppy fouls were given away. We talked about the turnovers too. Um, yeah, plenty of positives. There's a lot of people predicted this could be an upset, EJ, that the Hawks could have the edge with the fast break points, playing at a faster speed than the Knicks. Well, the Knicks won their way, but it is on our home
Yeah.
floor, and we are going to have to pull off a good road performance, because Atlanta are going to be feisty over there to try to even the series, or even try to just get one in Atlanta. In terms of what you saw from the rotations, I'll pull up the box score. Another pleasing
Yes.
thing is every single player, uh, EJ and Chat, was in the plus. Not one singular player had a minus. Um,
Yep.
when we look at the box score here and the stats, what really stands out to you?
Well, I can tell you what really comes out to me, or stands out for me rather, and this was really impressive, and I wrote this down in my notes as well while I was watching the game, is the second unit. Let's give props to the second unit because this is really where we saw that first extended run where the Knicks were able to push it up the lead to double digits, and this is where you had OG as the only starting piece on the floor, and you had Robinson, Clarkson, Shamit, as well as Deuce. There was something really seamless and effortless about their energy together and how well they seemed to work well together. And this was especially because Deuce in that second quarter didn't really have his shot going, but there was an energy and there was a persistence with that particular unit that if you're looking at the box score, that is really going to be one of the strengths of this series. I really hope it persists. I hope it maintains throughout the course of this series. But if we're going to do really well and to finish the Hawks in 4 or in 5 games, you really want that second unit to really be thriving, to really be moving the ball. And I will give it up to Mike Brown. I've had my questions about Mike Brown this entire season, but the idea of including Clarkson as your ninth man in the rotation, that was a gutsy decision. Because if you think about Jordan Clarkson's season, it's been up, it's been down. And for Mike Brown to have the confidence, first playoff game at MSG, big decision. This is your first playoff game as Knicks head coach, replacing Tom Thibodeau. The decision to go with Jordan Clarkson as your ninth man was a gutsy decision, and it played off. It paid out because you had more ball movement. You had an ability for someone to create off the dribble, and Jordan Clarkson had a couple of clutch plays that really accentuated the difference between the Knicks second unit and the Hawks second unit. So all done well.
Yeah, I'm glad, man, you shouted out Clarkson. I actually said pre-game, and I was also on my other brother's chat, Divine Nick's Real Talk. Lock in if you haven't already. Divine and Sharp Hours do great content, and I said Clarkson was going to have a. I felt like Clarkson was just going to have a night, and you're right. It was a real ballsy decision later in the season to just pull Clarkson back in, but he earned it. I think he earned his keep. And one thing that, makes Clarkson useful in this stage is the experience. He's been there, done that. He's another ball handler, like you said. Things get tight, half court game, playoffs. He can get a little herky jerky, contort his body, hit some tough shots. He keeps the defense honest. But yes, he does have head scratching moments. He does have like, what's going on here. But that's the thing about this team where Mike Brown can just go to another guy, if that's the case. While Deuce is fully not up to speed yet, if Deuce was fully running and gunning, then I would see less of a need for Clarkson, and you might look at a Modi Awara. But right
Yeah.
now, yeah, we are winning the transition game, and we're playing a little smaller with Clarkson, but that's helping out. Yeah, most def. Who else could you see that could play better? Like, what did you think of Shamit's game? Bench down the stretch a little bit, Hart brought in, and that changed the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Landry Shamet fan. When we started the season and we were having this question of who was going to be the 13th, 14th, 15th guy on the bench, part of the rotation, Landry Shamet, we were all concerned whether or not he was going to make the roster. And now look at where he is right now. I think that he didn't have an all-time Landry Shamet game, but I also think that there's something to be said about the first game of the playoffs. There's a different kind of energy. You could see it. This playoff run really, really matters for this team because there's such high expectations. And so I'm going to take a lot of these performances with a grain of salt, including the second unit, including Landry Shamet, included Deuce. We have to remember how they came into the game. We have to how they came into the playoff series. Landry missed significant time, so did Deuce. And so I think that what I loved about their performances tonight was lots of energies. They were still plus on the plus minus, so that's amazing as well too. Another thing that's often overlooked when it comes to Landry Shamet is his hustle on defense. And if there's ever anything that's going to be really important for the Knicks to really do well in this series, is you're going to need hustle plays, effort plays all the time on defense. There were a couple of defensive lapses where you could see that guys weren't communicating. And Landry Shamet, one of the things that he does is that he's going to continually move, he's going to continually rotate, he's going to continually hustle on defense. So not quite the night that I was hoping for. He missed a couple of open shots, but he's a player that when he's on the court, I always feel as if there's going to be something beneficial that comes when he's on the court. But I do think that by game two or game three, he'll have a better stroke, he'll have a better rhythm. Hopefully, the ball will move a little bit more. I know you didn't ask about this, but I do want to shout this out as well too. There's something about Cat being at the top of the key. There just seemed to be a different energy tonight with that. And so if there's a way of mixing Cat at the top of the key, orchestrating the offense, as well as getting Cat down low as well, and really making him the focal point to run the offense, even if we can do that for the second quarter, just getting him a little bit more time with the shooters around him, with the Shamit, with the Deuce, with those complementary players, I think that will be important to get other players like a Shamit in rhythm because Atlanta seemed to really struggle tonight when shooters were like when you had five out and you had this like movement. I think that will also help secondary players like a Shaman as well too.
Yeah, yeah, great point, EJ. Yeah, keep cool. Yeah, we see Pat with the walk-off interview. His pops as well. His partner in the crowd. We know, yeah, Cat's had a tough end of the season with his pops having some health concerns. But yeah, Cat practice seems to really help the situation. Mike Brown deserves a lot of credit, but yeah, want to give more credit to Cat above anyone else because yeah, he's really engaged now. He's locked in. A couple defensive plays he made, strip, chase down, block. I mean, we could count on one hand, EJ, since Cat became a Nick, how many chase down blocks and defensive hustle plays we've seen. Yeah, Cat seems to be fully locked in with this one. And the point about 7 steals that the Knicks got, I feel like having the defensive job Josh Hart did on Jalen Johnson, that's critical, EJ, because it allows OG Macau to be kind of, point of attack, not just be the point of attack, but be the off ball help as well, getting in those passing lanes, making those deflections and all of that, I think was really key as well. So yeah, Hart gives up a lot of size, but look, Jalen Johnson didn't really kill us. You want to tempt him shooting some of those threes because he ain't, the best 3-point
Yeah.
bowler.
Yeah, Cat, especially end of the second quarter. This is where I took some notes on this as well too. That back-to-back steal block play, um, that is, this was a kind of game where you saw glimpses of the promise of what the Knicks could be. It wasn't a perfect 48. It was not this perfect 48 minutes of perfection. We know this. We get it. There are ways in which we can knock and ding almost every player, but that towards the I think it was the last 90 seconds of the second quarter where Cat gets the steal. It's a clear effort play right there. They don't score, but then again to get the block right afterwards. That is what we need for this to be a successful run. And again, each game is not going to be pretty. Each game is not going to be perfection. At this point, it's not about an issue of being perfect. It's about getting 16 wins. We've gotten one. We need 15 more. That's the aim. Every game is not going to be perfect, but the effort, the agenda here, the objective here is to get 15 more wins. Whether it's pretty, whether it's ugly, whether it's mediocre, 15 more wins.
That's it. Just do enough. Like you said, do
Yep.
enough. Continue to get better as well. And look, tricky matchup. We saw the Cavs take care of the Raptors, and boy, we would have loved to have that matchup.
Yeah.
But if we can end this series in 5, I don't think anyone will really be sweating, which team we played. I think this has benefits, EJ, in terms of preparing us for what's going to be Boston if we get to the
hmm
second round. I think this team would toughen us up, harden us up a bit more for a Boston, matchup because these guys have the length, the athleticism, and the wings, and they do like to play fast as well. So I think this is really going to help the Knicks out. But yeah, like to your point, not everything's perfect, and I don't think it's going to be that way. But the first box I like to tick is okay, are your two best players playing close to their maximum ability? And you see Cat close out strong. You see JB, a killer to start the game, on
Yes.
a great start. And the Knicks are notorious for getting off to slow starts and giving teams hope. Now, whilst the Hawks did, to their credit, stick around and the Knicks turned it over, but just that hot start from Brunson just was enough to strike fear into ATL and to say, hey, you're going to have to play a perfect, flawless game just to get one victory, at least at Madison Square Garden. We'll move on to the Hack-a-Mitch conversation, EJ, because
Yep.
I want to get your thoughts on that, right? And I thought the call made a good point. Like you want to hack Mitch, but you're going to get yourself into the bonus earlier.
Yes.
What were your thoughts about that?
The Hack-a-Mitch thing is something that we've been talking about since last year's playoffs, if not even before that with Boston. Um, I think for a team like Boston, there's an extent to which it makes sense because they have the offensive firepower that even if they're in the bonus, it's like between Tatum and Brown, they can sustain like being in the bonus. So you're always switching two for three. What I didn't necessarily like about a team like Atlanta employing the Hack-a-Mitch method is
Mm,
that you don't have the scoring to afford to get into the bonus as quickly as you do. It's almost as if Hack-a-Mitch works for certain teams and Hack-a-Mitch can be a sign of desperation for other teams. I don't think that this was a sign of having the utmost confidence in their offense on the part of Atlanta. Obviously, we've been talking about this now for at least 6 seasons. If Mitchell Robinson could improve his free throw percentage, 10 points, 20 points, then this would be a non starter. And obviously, it would also change the trajectory of his career. He wouldn't be at that point. He'd be probably playing more starters minutes. However, with respect to this particular game, just game one, obviously it wasn't as effective as they thought it was going to be. Um, I do foresee if we do get a chance to play Boston, Hackimich might be more of an issue because with Atlanta, their bigs are less of a concern. Rebounding is not as much of a concern as it would be against the Boston. So I think Hackimich is really a situational conversation. Right now, I kind of laugh off the Hack-a-Mitch technique against Atlanta. But the next round, Hack-a-Mitch is more of a concern.
Yeah, vice versa. I think he's in Joe Mazzulla's head, and maybe Joe Mazzulla might be in his head a little bit as well. I think
Hmm.
that's fair game from last season. Yeah, the Knicks exercise those demons, and Tatum's come back. Boston's going to have to, you know, put that aside and overcome. I think the Knicks will be in their head, but we'll talk about that obviously as we get potentially closer to that matchup, right? But yeah, like El Tango agrees, and everyone in the chat appreciate you. Big up for coming through. The streets are buzzing with CT and EJ, and I think the Knicks can learn a lot more about themselves in this series as opposed to Toronto. Um, and I feel like look at Clarkson's stat line, EJ. Didn't attempt a single three, 4 of 6, right? 8 points plus 9. Now I think this is a credit to Clarkson where, obviously he's got his flaws, but he ain't settling. You know,
Yeah.
one thing that I think Mike Brown, some fans and people like about Clarkson is he likes contact. He'll do some things that Mikal Bridges won't in terms of put their shoulder down, put his head down,
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
and try to get to the rack. Now, in 11 minutes, Clarkson, I think earlier in the season, would have jacked a few threes in this kind of game. Rush of blood to the head, kind of like campaign from last season. But the very fact that Clarkson seems to be playing under control, and all 6 field goal attempts were from the 2 point range. That's putting the
Hmm.
defense under duress.
And if memory serves me correctly, like he had a putback attempt that was critical. I believe in the third quarter. I might be misquoting that, either third or fourth quarter. Clarkson played with control tonight, and that's one of the things that unfortunately we sometimes forget in the NBA 2K era is that it's not just about athleticism; it's also about IQ. And I'm not talking about Emmanuel quickly. It's about a basketball player's mental acuity and ability to make really good decisions in high pressurized situations. And Jordan Clarkson tonight, we have to give him his flowers for being under control and making smart basketball moves or smart basketball players at the right time at pivotal moments. There was a point, third quarter, where the balance of the game could have swung in favor of the Hawks. There were these moments, but seeing Clarkson take 6 really quality shots, nothing really outrageous, nothing really like head scratching. That's a sign of playoff maturity, and that's one of the things where when we have these conversations before the playoffs start, you can't really understand or you can't really predict how are people going to respond to high pressure situations when the roster's locked 9 people, and you know you're going to get 15 to 18 minutes, and you're going to get 6 to 7 touches in terms of shots. Are you going to make them 6 to 7 quality shots? And fortunately tonight for Jordan Clarkson, he took some really good shots, and he actually was rewarded with extended minutes in terms of the rotation. And I love the fact that he took the ball to the basket because that's the other thing too. Like when it comes to playoff basketball, which is very different than the regular season, force the referees to make some decisions about calls. And we saw even how the refs started calling the game slightly differently. The first half was a lot more open in terms of a lot more free flowing in terms of allowing players to play. There was definitely calls that were not called, but you started to see that the refs had to make decisions about calls that they had to blow the whistle on third quarter, fourth quarter. So that's the ultimate thing that Jordan Clarkson was able to do. Whether or not he got any free throws, which obviously he didn't, but it forces the ref to have to call the game slightly differently if you're moving, if you're going into the paint. And that's also something that Josh Hart does really well as well too, is that once he goes into the paint, once he bulldozes his way into the paint, it forces refs to have to make decisions. Am I going to call this as opposed to Mikal Bridges, who will often take a fadeaway, 11, 12 feet away from the basket?
Yeah, as the chat continues to show some love to Clarkson as well. We agree, appreciate you. Um, Unlike other years, El Tango says Clarkson is more engaged on D, and I think that's a credit to him and the coach. Paula says, yeah, Clarkson took it to the bucket, which is good. I want to link these two because whose minutes did Clarkson take? It was Jose Alvarado. We talk
Yeah.
about a guy, we needed ball handling, we need some defense. Well, yeah, Clarkson stepped up his defense. He'll take it to the rack. He's bigger than Jose Alvarado. How did you see that decision ultimately? pros and cons versus Alvarado and Clarkson with that decision that Mike Brown made.
It's why I gave Mike Brown props. It the loss of the secondary ball handler seemed to be minimized this particular game. It's as if, like, I if you hadn't mentioned Jose Alvarado's name tonight, just in the conversation, I didn't notice or I didn't feel that loss. There was just something about the fluidity of the second unit. Again, some players didn't perform as well, but it wasn't as pronounced of a loss as as if, like, for example, like the second unit had 15 turnovers or anything of that nature. So I guess the rotation is going to have to be situational. There has to be a feel for the game. And this is kind of where analytics kind of falls apart, where, when you're trying to do everything by the numbers, sometimes the numbers cannot really measure what's transpiring. We didn't have 22 turnovers, right? So it's great to that Jordan Clarkson, who's that kind of player who you never know can get on a burner, and you really want him to have the feel for the game, have had some touches, have had some minutes during the course of the playoffs, because you never know, a game four, a game five, a next round, because he had that game one experience, because he had that game one opportunity, those minutes give him to a level of confidence that are going to be really important.
Yeah, you said it, and I'm sure there will be a Clarkson game where he just 20 points wins us the game, and there could be an Alvarado moment as well. EJ just gives us that versatility. Yeah, shout out to everyone in the chat. Buzzer beaters with us. Glenn Jones, my guy. El Tango, Paula, NYC, everyone else. Buzz and Chris Gotti, and Knicks Nation. Shea Signature, salute. Replay squad as well. Let us know your thoughts and how the Knicks can close this series out a lot earlier. Look, Karl Anthony Towns, Brunson, I mean, they both get the game balls, EJ, and that was why I'm feeling confident heading into these playoffs, because other than last year, those two are, they saved it till late. But what's been your thoughts on the recent connection with Brunson and Cat? Seems like they're able to have good games together now, whereas before it was so much like, okay, Brunson goes off due to a lot of dominance on the ball, but Cat had moments but couldn't put it all together. But now we're seeing, both of those two. Is that on some of them mostly? Is it on Mike Brown? What what's your thoughts on saving it till late for these two to really showcase their connection down the stretch?
Those are the intangibles of any sport or any professional relationship. It's hard to articulate. If you've ever had a professional relationship with anyone, you don't get along with everyone. There's some people with whom you get
Mm.
along famously. It's just this kind of synergy that even if you try to articulate it, even if you try to express what is it about these two people that work really well together, it's hard to explain. And then there are some people who you would think it would just be a natural pairing, and it just doesn't work. And there are some situations where that pairing, that symmetry, that chemistry, that synergy, it just takes time to mature and to develop. And I think in the case of Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson, it's really the latter that's emerging, is that you do have two very talented players. It's taken time for them to figure out how to play well with one another. In part, and I think this is really important, have they ever had, and you can correct me because I'm actually trying to think about this on because we didn't have this conversation beforehand. Have they played with a similar player prior to them playing together? In other words, has Cat played with a Jalen Brunson like player prior to this run? And has Jalen Brunson played with a Cat like player in his run? And so if that's not the case, then it's going to take time for them to understand one another. It's going to take time for them to figure out, okay, who does what when. It takes time for them to understand, all right, how do we do this in a healthy way? And that's complicated. All professional relationships are very complicated. These are players who were the number one player on their respective teams for most of their careers. They were the top players for their respective college teams, their professional teams before they got to the NYC. And this is difficult. And now at the NBA, the highest levels of all professional sports in terms of basketball, it's not as easy as like a 2K trade. And that's the thing that we can't really explain. There has to be this kind of come to Jesus moment where all of a sudden people kind of figure it out.
Man, you're spitting facts on fire. And there's other ways that Mike Brown, other challenges. Let's not forget defensively. How do you play those two for prolonged stretches? And we got a lot of criticism last season, and that's a lot of reason why Cat deserves credit due to the effort, engagement. He's not, or both have done a lot of growing in that area because defensively, they're not known as defensive players, and they often get picked on. I thought Brunson, they
Hmm.
tried to pick on him a lot, but he held his
Yeah.
own, and that was the key to the defense not breaking down. Um, Cat as well, schematically, it was a lot of drop coverage last season with Tibbs. They've really figured that out as well. So on the defensive side, I think we've worked out, okay, we can play those two and not get killed. Um, but on the offensive side, you see Cat's passing. We're really
Yes.
utilizing him top of the key, like you said. Really, really like Cat at the top of the key. And as they said on the call, if the 3-point shot goes down, that opens up the driving
Yes.
lane. Whereas I feel like
Yes.
too much earlier and last season, Cat tried to drive too many times
Yes.
first, where he
Yep.
wasn't getting that separation and he was getting done with the hook.
Yep. And will create a pressurized defensive situation once he falls on the floor, and you have about 4 to 5 seconds where he's trying to lumber up to catch up with the defensive set after he's fallen on the floor because he didn't get a call or he's lagging behind because he's complaining. I totally agree with you, and I think that's what a lot of times people miss in terms of the analysis of the team is that you have two players who not only were their top players or top players on previous teams, these were also two players who were not needed to be the defensive stalwarts on their teams before becoming a Nick. So now you combine the two of them, and they now comprise 40% of your starting lineup. They're they've known themselves to be the player number one, 1A, on their respective squads, and they did not have to be the defensive anchors on their squad. That creates situational problems, and I think that takes time to hammer out. And let's not forget, this is a brand new coach, brand new system, brand new schemes, brand new language, and so this is not going to be something that comes together overnight. And I really compliment the fact that you talked about this idea of Cat really starting the offense at the top of the key, as opposed to always going to the drive, and often it's a drive to the right, and that because that creates defensive pressure. And this also like exposes Mikel, exposes OG, and exposes Josh because now you're forcing more defensive pressure on them as well to cover for the fact that you're basically playing 4 on 5 for about 3 to 4 seconds. So well said.
Yeah, and we've got some quotes to bring up from post game from the podium, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to bring these up now. Mike Brown says, always a special feeling walking into MSG. I pinch myself every time I walk in. Um, and Josh Hart says that's something we need from him. We depend on him for offense when he comes into the game. Obviously, defensive energy too. So that's talking about Deuce McBride is Josh Hart in this one. Um, Hart says Cat did a great job on initiating the Knicks offense too. Mike Brown says we'll see how the game goes. We'll leave him in until we think we need to make a sub. Regarding the Hack-a-Mitch, whenever we feel like we need to make a sub, we will. We're going to give him a chance, right? Yeah, I thought that was a good job getting him out quickly, gave him a chance, couple possessions. Mike Brown also says Brunson stepped up to the plate like he should have done, and he hit some big shots for us early. Um, One of the things they talked about was making sure we fought hard to keep them off the offensive glass as well. So that was key. Dyson Daniels is known for crashing the glass too. Quinn Snyder is saying on the Hack-a-Mitch is very impactful. We had an opportunity to do that, decided it made sense too. So look, Quinn Snyder is a guy that'll think outside the box as well. I
Yeah.
think EJ and wasn't really surprised, and I think we'll continue to see more of it. But the thing that I notice is the more you send that guy to the line, the more comfortable he will get. You saw that smirk on Mitch's face,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
he really wants to make these coaches pay. He really
yeah.
does, you know.
Okay, let me jump on that too. Like the other part about the Hack-a-Mitch that now that we're mentioning it, um, did Mitch have a a stellar performance? Not necessarily, right? I mean, like he had two blocks. It felt like 22 blocks. Because here's what happens. I think what the Hack-a-Mitch does, it seems like it theoretically like throws the Knicks' offensive rhythm out of whack. But it seemed as if it almost threw off Atlanta's offensive rhythm out of whack as well too. Because now all of a sudden the game just kind of starts grinding. It grinds to a halt. There seems to be less of a flow. There seems to be less of a rhythm. And so this is again why I say, and I think that hacking Mitch is not necessarily a smart strategy for every team. It's cool to think outside of the box, but you only have 7 games in this playoff series, and you have to win 4 of them. And the opening game, the first game of any series, this is your best opportunity to steal home court. I don't know if this was the smartest method to actually try to steal a game that was actually winnable. I mean, if we actually stop and think about it, I think what was the score? Like we were up by 2 halftime. So again, this, it wasn't a 20-point margin. It wasn't a 22-point margin. It was a 2-point margin at the end of the first half. And so again, the hack and Mitch, it seems to work theoretically because I think he only went 1 for 4 from the free throw line. But was it worth it? I think that's the question you have to ask yourself. Did it disrupt the offensive flow too much to actually be worthwhile?
Yeah. And look, if I'm honest and I'm the opposing coach, I'm obviously, yeah, thinking about it. But where I think it can backfire is two ways, right? They did what Missoula did, and it backfired in one of those road wins that the Knicks got, and that was to do it early, right? Because you rack up the fouls, and let's say you sub Mitch out, cool, I won that battle. Now your team's in the bonus, and I got all my offensive weapons out there. So I'm using Mitch as a bait to get you into the bonus quickly, and then I'm just
Yeah,
going to sub him out. Now, guess what? We're one of the best teams in the league. You got to try to defend us now with all your guys in the bonus. So
yeah, yeah.
that's that's one thing. And if I'm the opposing coach, EJ, I would do Hack-a-Mitch, but I wouldn't do it until they're already in the bonus. But Mitch might not be in the game by then, you know?
I also wouldn't do it at MSG. There's a difference between doing it at MSG on the home court, where you're going to get a favorable crowd reaction, as opposed to doing it, let's say, in Boston or doing it in it. I don't, actually, truth be told, I don't know if it would work in Atlanta because Atlanta is MSG South number one. Charlotte is MSG South number two. It's such a situational decision that on the surface it seems like it's a smart move because he's such a poor free throw shooter. But again, you have to really consider, is it the best move? In addition, it worked well in the Boston series last year, in part because the bench composition was quite different than what it is this year. This year, there are more options. There's more flexibility in terms of what the Knicks can do in response to a hack and Mitch. Um, Mike Brown is not Tom Thibodeau. Tom Thibodeau would have sat through it and been like, all right, keep on fouling him, and he'll make 30 to 40% of the shots, hopefully. Mike Brown decided after a couple of minutes, we're done with this, and I'm going to switch this out. Which again begs the question: were those 2 to 3 minutes of offensive possessions worth it if you weren't able to capitalize on it in terms of outscoring the Knicks during that stretch?
Yeah, great point. You know, on the road with the crowd going crazy, at least at MSG, yeah, he has a chance to split. Um, Also, another thing I would do, yeah, if it was a tighter game, if the Knicks are up comfortably, like you got to pull up your sleeve, roll up your sleeves, lift your shorts up, and try to defend, get back into the game that way. Because if the Knicks have that lead, it's just going to slow things down. And yeah, you think it might be a way to work your way back into the game, but like I said, you're just going to rack up the fouls. Like Mo Gay, they're
Yeah,
relying on him now. He got his fifth foul, right? If you want to
yeah,
keep doing this hacker Mitch, and let's say you come up against the real stubborn coach, like you said, like Tibbs, who's just going to leave Mitch in the game. Okay, your guys are going to rack up their fouls eventually. Like you're trying to make a run and win a game, right? Who are you going to sacrifice to keep
Yes,
using up their
yes.
fouls? Like Dyson Daniels, you can't be getting him
You
into
can't do it
foul
with them.
trouble because
Yeah.
he's your best defender. You don't want any of your offensive weapons to get too many fouls because then you're going to have to take them out of the game. So you can only do it if you've got like one, like, role player where, you don't depend on them at all, and you're just going to use them for five fouls. um,
But that's not even a smart strategy because you're wasting the minutes then.
yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, it is a lot of mind games. Like you said, I'm already can't wait for that Boston series, but uh, let's get your predictions now. Like we've seen one game. Like are you feeling more
Oh,
confident about a sweep, 5, 6, or you just want to see one more game in MSG, see what we'll do on the road?
you know, I love Bill Daughtry, and when we interviewed him, a while ago, and he said, "I refuse," and he did it so smoothly. Bless the legend. The legend said to us, CT, EJ, I don't predict games. He said it so smoothly, and I was like, I just converted. But if I had to make a prediction, what I will say is, yeah, shout out the legend Bill Daughtry. If you don't know, New York sports radio icon. Um, it's hard to predict game to game, and I will throw this in here too, because injuries, that's a part of this equation. And we saw what's happening with Houston tonight with no Kevin Durant not playing the first game. So assuming that everyone remains healthy, what I think a lot of prognosticators believe was going to transpire with the series is not what's going to transpire. I think that what we're seeing with Atlanta, at least game one, is that this is a team that lacks enough offensive firepower to really make a substantive run to upset the Knicks. And there were a lot of people who were saying that there was going to be an upset. I do not foresee that. The only instance in which that would be possible is if there's a significant injury to a major player. I'm not going to speak it into existence, but I would assume that this will be a series that will be much easier than the professional talkers had estimated prior to the start of the series.
Yeah, I feel like we've been through the tests. That's the thing about this squad. Like, look at these comebacks on NBA Cup Day, Christmas Day. Um, like you said, injuries. You knock on wood, and that's a part of the sport. But that's why, from a front office perspective, you make sure you stack up the depth. You give guys opportunities during the regular season, so they're not coming in completely cold like Tibbs did with DeLon Wright and Shamit towards the end of last season. Like now, don't you feel confident if the game or situation called upon, if you had to put Diawara or you had to put a
Yeah.
Tyler Kolek or Huck Porty
Hmm.
out there? They've played legitimate minutes this regular
Hmm.
season and they've contributed. So I would feel okay putting those guys out there for limited stretches.
Bro, you said DeLon Wright. You said DeLon Wright. I mean, like, but that's why again, and you used to say this all the time, is that every season is its own story. And if you consider this squad versus last year's squad, I had forgotten that DeLon Wright was a Nick, and that was like he was a major contributor last year, and he's not even in the league. I don't believe. So again, the flexibility that we have this season versus last season is astronomical. I mean, and it's such a difference maker, and it's why, like, when we first started this journey together years ago, and the Knicks seemed to be so fascinated with the big three composition, you could see why that was so problematic because the league had moved towards a larger and expanded roster because you need that roster flexibility. And it would appear that finally there seems to be some level of roster length and flexibility so that we don't have to have a conversation about, how many minutes is DeLon Wright going to be playing this playoff run. Oh, man. Oh, that was a throwback.
Man, you said DeLon Wright's not in the NBA. Well, get this. Campaign's not in the NBA right now.
Are we doing
I know,
this? We're going by the roster? Go ahead,
yeah.
do it. Do it.
Pre-
Do it.
Precious is playing. Well, he had a great season, so credit to Precious. But he was on the Sacramento Kings. So, and PJ Tucker is, you know, doing gigs promoting his sneaker collection. So four of the main guys we're relying on last postseason. A couple of one's out of the playoffs, two are out of the league, and the other one's like retired. So we've we've made huge leaps. In terms of uh, people we can rely on. We've got a draft pick we're going to talk about, and we've got a good second round pick as well. As we see some scenes outside Madison Square Garden, the Knicks are hosting two viewing sites. EJ, one in Central Park and one on 33rd, and it looks like it's just going to get bigger. One of the things that was reported is that Giannis was really drawn to the Knicks like frenzy like soccer crowds that that gathered at these watch parties.
Yeah, we'll have to have that Giannis conversation at some point at the end of the season. I have some thoughts. I have some big thoughts, but I do appreciate the fact that going back to the 2024-2025 roster and playoff composition as opposed to where we are in 2026. It like I didn't even remember that how many players are no longer not even just on the Knicks, but not even in the league anymore. So that says a lot about how there are 500 jobs in the league, and three or four of our major contributors last year for the playoff run are no longer in the league. So that again, when we're telling the story of this playoff push, and even questions about things like Hack-a-Mitch or who should get what minutes, we are actually eating really well right now. So that we can say that we have Jose Alvarado on the bench and he didn't get any burn tonight. That is eating really well. That you have those level of options. We're eating so well. All right, let me go here. I'm going for it. We're eating so well that Mo Diawara is a piece that we have to figure out how to maintain control of. That is a Knicks player. That is a Knicks homegrown talent that we have to figure out how do we keep this piece in house, because again we're at a luxury at this point where we have to even figure out like how do we get him more burn so that he can grow into a financially reasonable asset that we can keep under control for the foreseeable future, because again he's a heck of a player, he's a heck of a talent who's already just demonstrated, holy crap, what can we be in the next couple of years? So we are eating so much better than what we were last year, particularly when it comes to this roster composition. Because again, the pickings were slim last year, and once players got nicked up, it was very clear we weren't going to win against certain teams because we just didn't have the manpower and people were hurt. So let's count our blessings.
Yeah, love that, man. Love that quote, man. We're eating so well. I want to add to that.
Mhm.
Like we're eating so well that there's a player on a two-way contract that I would be okay. Kevin McCullough Jr.
Yeah,
who
yeah,
would be capable. Not saying I'm clamoring for him to be playing it in playoff minutes, but I wouldn't be afraid to
yeah,
see him play
yeah.
playoff minutes. I know he can't because he's not playoff eligible, but yeah, that's how good of a situation we're in, with the two-way. Um, Tyler Kolek, you could make a point that as a draft pick, a sophomore, he could be theoretically ahead of Jose Alvarado in
Yes.
Mike Brown's mind. We don't quite know, and another point, two buyout guys chose the Knicks in Clarkson in the summer and Jeremy Sohan during
Yeah.
during a buyout season where he had a lot of choices. So I only expect that to grow next season. It could be more big game players potentially that seek a buyout. You know,
Hey, again, like I think this is where, and it's funny because we're in the position now where we have players who deserve, you could argue, who deserve minutes and who won't get minutes. And that's the nature of the playoffs. That's the difference between the regular season and the playoffs. The playoffs, you tighten up your rotation. Obviously, there might be some flexibility in terms of who your ninth man is, and possibly even having some opportunities where you get a tenth man in. But that is what separates today's NBA from the NBA 15 years ago. The I've been preaching this gospel for like the past 2 years. The days of the Heatles are way over where you're going to have heavy minutes on the top three players. There has to be equal distribution of talent. I mean, look at what happened, for example, to Golden State. I mean, we've seen a dynasty decline in real time. And what happens when your roster is too top heavy? And it's not just top heavy in terms of talent, but it's also top heavy in terms of financial responsibilities. There comes a point where the bill becomes due. And I think one of the things that the Knicks are always going to have to consider is how do you make sure, uh, how do you make sure that you maintain a lot of roster flexibility and financial flexibility, as well as getting players who are great for their value. And Buzzer, I see your question. Um, it's going incredibly, incredibly well. Um, I should be done in a little over a year, and I will flash that diploma when I get it. So thank you so much, Buzzer, for the shout out. That means a lot. If you don't know, I'm in the process of getting my doctorate. It's why you guys do not see me very often. CT knows this. I was on all the time, and then my mom passed away from Alzheimer's, and she was on me. She was on me so much, and she was like, "I want you to get your doctorate." And finally, right before she passed away, I started the whole application process, and now I'm about to get choked up. So I can't believe this is gonna happen on Xbuzz. I was able to show her the acceptance letters on her deathbed before she passed away, a couple months before she passed away. So that's largely where I've been. If you guys don't see me, I'm writing papers, I'm reading, I'm doing research, all that good stuff. And so, thank you so much for the love. Thank you so much for the support, and continue to support this podcast. So even if you don't see me around, I'm always supporting Nick's Buzz. I am Nick's Buzz every day, all day. So thank you so much for the love.
Man, what can we say, man? Can we get a thumbs up for that, man? EJ, you're the MVP. Locked in. Who else could do a doctorate and still be locked into the Knicks and coming on our show, live streams, and chopping it up with us wherever you can? You know, always texting.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
like I said, staying locked in, man. Real one. You know, no matter what we're doing or what life throws at us, we're always as a Knicks fan, we're always there. We're always tapped in. We're always wanting to see us go all the way. What a special feeling, what a special time. Um, everyone in the building, salute. We've got some more quotes post game. Continue rolling with us. Um, Brunson on the podium says it's really important for the Knicks to be able to win when he's not at his best offensively, right? No matter what, you got to think positive. You got to be positive and fight through anything, right? As we've talked about Colex and everyone kind of feeling like we're so much deeper, right? Well, that only matters, EJ, if you have a coach that you feel confident could switch it up and make a change, make a tough decision, right? What's been your thoughts about Mike Brown and maybe some criticism he got earlier, and ultimately, with still a long way to go, like what has you maybe feeling positive about what we could see as the playoffs continue?
One of the things I think Mike Brown will always be, to a certain extent, be measured relative to Tom Thibodeau's success. Like that's just going to be the way we look at his career, his tenure as the coach. Is, for example, will he be able to get the Knicks to the conference finals? Will he be able to get the Knicks through the conference finals to the NBA finals? And then from there, if he's able to get the Knicks to the finals, then he'll be able to craft his own particular legacy. He'll be able to craft his own narrative in terms of how he should be remembered as a Knicks coach. Right now, in his first year, everything is going to be measured relative to the performance of the Knicks throughout the Tom Thibodeau era. And I mean, is that fair? It's not for me to say if it's fair, but that's how sports tend to be measured, and in particular, that's how New York sports are measured. It's for example, as a major Yankees fan, and many of you guys know I'm a Yankees fan. Joe Girardi and Aaron Boone, their success is measured against Joe Torre's. They haven't won the same amount of championships. They haven't won the same amount of games. And so for many Yankees fans, it's just not the same. And Johnny Sheba, shout out to you. I saw that comment. Thank you so much. I appreciate the love. But Mike Brown's tenure will really, really be measured by what happens this playoff series. Because again, the other thing is that many people, myself included, we thought that this was the season with Halliburton down, with with Jason Tatum being down. This seemed to be like the opening of the Red Sea, and like, oh my gosh, like, was this going to be the season? It seemed predestined that this was going to be the season where the Knicks should make their way to the NBA Finals. Um, what will happen? Time will tell. But I do think as the season goes, that's how Mike Brown is going to be scrutinized, and he might be scrutinized harshly. If the Knicks fail in the second round, his life is going to be really miserable. And I do not foresee him having the same rope, the same amount of rope, and the same amount of leash that Tom Thibodeau had. If he does not get out of the second round, you better believe every single Knicks podcast, all 7,422 of them, they will all be yelling for Mike Brown to be replaced by whomever.
Yeah, it's Paula makes a great point. You know, people are always going to measure Mike Brown against Tibbs. Um, yeah, that's just how it is. And you look at it like Tibbs obviously didn't have the bench we had, but Mike Brown takes over the same core, right? So coaching wise, there's only so much you can do, right? If you've taken over the same core of the team, ultimately it's on them to get it done. Now you can make some tweaks and try to put guys in better situations, and I think Mike Brown's done a decent job of that. Obviously, better late. That 2-9 stretch was obviously the black mark on the season, and failing to beat Detroit. But we played OKC quite tough. I thought, you know, I was more encouraged in terms of how we played OKC, but the Detroit losses left me like hella frustrated. Like I was super
Yeah.
frustrated against the Detroit ones. But obviously, winning a season series against Boston has me feeling real good about a second round potential matchup because I know Tatum's not going to be at his like best. If you're going to test him physically, like it's a tough handle to come and play against the Knicks just coming back from an Achilles, EJ. Like how let's say the Boston series started tomorrow, like would you be feeling a lot more confident compared to last season series?
I mean, I last season series. Last season series stressed me out so much. I don't know what was more stressful, getting a doctorate or dealing with last season's Boston series. I do not know what was more stressful. And I was doing both at the same time, and it doesn't look like it, but I was losing my hair because of that series. I do think though that Boston this year is a different team. And I have to always remember this because I've been a basketball fan for an extremely long time. The way that players perceive and operate in the regular season now versus when I was a kid is entirely different. So, how we understand the regular season as a barometer or a measuring stick for the playoffs is always a flawed metric. It's always a flawed measuring tool because often, like many players do not, and we know this about this Knicks squad, is they do not treat every game seriously. They do not treat every game with the level of care that, let's say, for example, playing against an OKC will. The same could be said in terms of Detroit. Detroit cared a lot about playing well against the Knicks. They really cared. However, there were times it was clear that the Knicks did not care. For example, one of the last Brooklyn games, it was clear that the Knicks did not really care. So I guess I say all of that to say, when it comes to playing Boston and my confidence levels with respect to playing Boston, I do think this is not going to be the same kind of series as it was last season. I do think the physical grind for Jason Tatum is something for us to pay a lot of attention to, especially coming back so quickly from that level of injury. Um, we've never seen anything like that before, and playoff minutes are very different than regular season minutes, and playoff intensity is very different from regular season intensity. So, am I more confident? I won't say I'm more confident, but I will say I'm less stressed.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'm kind of similar because, yeah, you know, they got a hell of a coach. I do think they're probably younger and more athletic They lose Horford, they lose Porzingis, who's you know slower now, injury prone. They lost Cornet, but yeah, they've done a hell of a job. Boston. I mean, to finish ahead of us has just been yeah, definitely one of a disappointing notes for us, but also a huge note for them to play most of the season without Tatum and still finish ahead of the Knicks. But at the end of the day, yeah, that no one's going to remember that. It's going to come down to who gets out of that series. Assuming we both meet, and it's going to be a hell of a series. It's going to be maybe an all timer. That is where we're going to need Mike Brown to be at his best, and hopefully he's saved a couple things up his sleeve. As Kat says at the podium, it was just good to see his dad there walking around enjoying Nick's ball, talking about his father in attendance tonight. So yeah, Kat had a lot on his plate, man, but very very proud of Kat's performance, and yeah, has me feeling good about the road ahead as the Knicks try to at least get back to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals. As we get ready to wrap this one up. And appreciate you guys coming through tonight as Brunson and Kat both take the game ball. Encouraging signs that we can play better. We just got to be less sloppy, I think, with the ball. Try to get out to another fast start and just, yeah, really take the hope. It's the hope that you want to take away from Atlanta, right? Come out with an even better performance, game two, EJ, and go 2-0 up feeling good going to MSG South. How do you see game two playing out?
Game two, same thing. I think that every both teams are going to make adjustments. I think for Atlanta, the big adjustment is to replicate what they did the first quarter of this game, continue to apply pressure, to continue to run, 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 use lots of energy, and use your length from positions 1 through 4 as your actual benefit. You actually have an advantage with respect to that. Your team is long with respect to, with the exception of your 5 position, but use your length and apply pressure. Force Josh Hart to make shots. Force Josh Hart to take shots if you're Atlanta. Um, one of the things that you hope that does not happen if you're Atlanta is that, we didn't really give him a shout out, and he's one of my favorite players, but make so that OG Anunoby disappears. And he didn't disappear this game. I mean, he was kind of aggressive with the ball, and I actually want to see him do more of that. If you want Cat to run the offense, I want OG also to be more aggressive, taking the ball to the basket and forcing the refs to decide to blow their whistles. But again, for the Knicks, it's all about making sure that they're playing quality defense, that there aren't defensive lapses where people are going to the basket and getting open rim runs. You don't want that at all. You want to make sure that your rotations are nice, smooth, and crisp. And also, make sure that you get Atlanta to their bench as quickly as possible. If you get to Atlanta's bench, you're having a good game. So those will be my keys for game two.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, they tried Gabe Vincent, but yeah, he wasn't too effective as well. Mo Gay, got to capitalize on that. I feel like our bench can be better. Deuce, I want to see him really start to click. Hopefully, Shamit plays a better game offensively, although his defense was sound. And yeah, Carl Anthony Towns, hopefully Mitch can have even more of an impact in the paint. So yeah, I'm predicting we go 2-0 up, and I think game three is going to be the series right there. You go
Yes.
3-0 up, there's no coming back. Bring out the
No, it's done.
brooms. Yeah.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be sweet seeing, Boston? Do you think they'll face any problems against Philly? Do you think that could maybe go six? Um,
Philly has talent. The thing with Philly is it's a consistency question. Obviously, we don't know exactly, or at least I don't know what's exactly happening with Joel Embiid. I don't expect him to make much of a presence this particular playoff series. But PG might have a vintage PG game. You still have VJ Edgecombe. You still have Tyrese Maxey. There might be like a. I can see Philly taking a game or two, perhaps. Um, I easily see Philly taking a game. Um, and again, I have watched too much basketball. One knee tweak, that's it. So
yep. And yeah, I'll be eagerly watching tomorrow the Pistons Magic. that's going to be prison ball. That is going to be
It
that's going to be insane, right? Hopefully, yeah, they rough
won't
them
be
up
magic. Let's just say that.
a bit. Hey,
It won't be magic. Let's just say that.
yeah, won't be magic, right?
Yeah.
Great point,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, everyone coming through the building, appreciate you. Let's go, Knicks. Solid start. We can do better, but big game at home again, game two. I think the jitters and the nerves usually subside, and I think that's where you really start to see the series develop. And hopefully the Knicks can get on top early and really put the hurt on the Hawks in this one and doubt some of the or quiet some of the doubt that this could have been an upset series. Right, that's not on my cards or EJ's. Is everyone big up? Blessings. Stay safe and big up everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.